I'll begin by introducing the case study we are presenting. Growing Venezuela GDP to elevate poverty. Before I commence, I will speak a little bit about Venezuela as a country. Venezuela is a fast-growing country in this Latin America. But since 2014, Venezuela GDP has shrunk by nearly 80 to 90%, leading to an alarming poverty rate. 82.4 population lives on poverty. And some of Venezuela's natural resources include substantial deposit of natural gas, iron ore, which is majorly used for aluminum production, and their major exports, oil. The reason for this collapse include in our research over reliance on oil. Venezuela as a country rely much on oil, which took 90% of their exports. Instead of Venezuela as a country to rely on some other exports like agriculture and manufacture. This manufacture include the using of iron ore that I mentioned previously for aluminum production. Another reason for their collapse is hyperinflation. Hyperinflation in Venezuela hit up to 1,000% in 2018 and remained by 337% by 2023, I mean. With this hyperinflation, it affects the economic growth of Venezuela as a country. And the third reason for their collapse include governance failure. Governance failure, this include corruption, this poor institutional performance of government, and some other things. And one of the major issues we're discussing in this research is Dutch disease. What I mean by Dutch disease is how their government focus much on oil instead of some other things like agriculture and manufacturing. This contributes so much little to their GDP. Additionally, hyperinflation, like I said the other, eroded purchasing power. The poorest 10% Venezuela can live less than $8 in a day, while the richest earn over $500, depending on inequality and their stage and their political affiliation. Also, these three barriers, like I mentioned, contribute so much in the collapse of Venezuela GDP and the collapse of Venezuela economy as a country. I will now leave for the second speaker, Chukunonso, to continue.
Thank you, Uluwatosin. My name is Akamnono Chukunonso Isaac. To understand how to restore economic growth, we applied the solo growth model. This model explains long-term economic growth as a result of three key factors. And the three key factors are capital accumulation, labor productivity, and technological advancements. According to Solo in 1956, sustainable GDP growth is driven by improvements in infrastructure, human capital, and innovation. We will now apply this to Venezuela, and we'll be applying it to Venezuela in three different ways, which are the capital, labor, and technology. Firstly, for capital, the country's infrastructure is crumbling seriously with electricity shortages, poor transports, and underinvestments, which have all limited economic activities in Venezuela. Goes down to explain how badly Venezuela's capital stock has deteriorated. Years of underinvestment and economic mismanagement have led to crumbling infrastructures like electricity blackouts, which limits industrial growth, output, and daily life. Public investment has fallen sharply, thereby eroding productive capacity. Also, transport networks are poorly maintained and managed, isolating communities and isolating communities and raising the cost of living and doing business. Secondly, we move to labor. Venezuela's human capital index is low. One third of children are out of school, and healthcare only reaches 70% of the population. In solo terms, without replenishing and modernizing physical capital, first of all, it is impossible to raise GDP in a meaningful way. Going back to labor, specifically human capital, Venezuela's human capital index is one of the lowest in Latin America, with about one third of school children out of school, which is the lost generation of workers. We also have poor healthcare system that only reaches 70% of the population, with many lacking basic services and nutrition. Moving on to the last one, which is technology. Research and development spending is just 0.64% of GDP. The country lacks access to modern agricultural and financial technology. Technological advancements, which is the most important component for long-term growth, is lacking in Venezuela, with Venezuela spending just 0.64% of GDP on research and development compared to over 2% in many developed countries. Another challenge the country faces as regards to technology is that there's a lack of digital infrastructure, innovation incentives, and international collaborations, that's partnerships with other countries regarding technology and business. Without investing in these three areas, Venezuela cannot grow sustainably. This model gives us a framework to build a policy response. In Solo's model, this just means Venezuela is not moving along the technological line, which is essential for raising outputs per worker over time. I'll now pass the speaker to Teslim, who will present our recommendation based on this model. Thank you.
Thank you, Chukunasu. My name is Olajide Akinloye Teslim. Based on the solo growth model and Venezuela's current challenge, we propose three key areas for the government of Venezuela. Then the first one is diversify the Venezuela's economy. Venezuela must reduce its dependence on oil by supporting manufacturing, agriculture, and fintech. We suggest 5 tax holiday for the sectors to attract investment and create jobs. For agriculture, the government could model Nigeria's anchor borrower program. What do I mean by anchor borrower program? Like to borrow some scale companies, like small scale businesses, some money, and also by offering subsidy to 1 million small farmers. Fintech is another opportunity. As we all know, Venezuela can adopt mobile finance model from Africa and other countries that practice in such model. The goal is the raise the non-oil share of GDP from under 10% to 15% by 2030 and create 500,000 jobs for the people and citizens of Venezuela. Another point is to stabilize the currency. Inflation must be brought under control. We recommend legalized dollarization, which already began informally in 2019, and limiting money supply growth to 5%. A currency stabilization fund should be created from oil revenue. If successful, inflation could drop below 50% by 2028. This will help increase purchase power and reduce extreme poverty in Venezuela as a country, you know. Then the third one is to strengthen the governance. Judicial independence should be enhanced by appointing impartial judge in line with international guidelines. Then blockchain technology can be used to track PDVSA oil fund and reduce corruptions. We also recommend raising social spending to 20% of the budget, especially in education and healthcare, which we all know is the most important sector in all countries. This will help raise Venezuela's corruption ranking by 5% in 2030. These policies are realistic model after successful cases like Estonia, Nigeria, and the UAE. Now I will pass the speaker to Amjad, who will take us through the expectation outcome and the timeline for the implementations. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother Taslim, for explaining the reform strategies. My name is Amjad Ali. Now let's explore that success would actually look like, the timeline for implementation, and warm up over our overall conclusion. This section highlights the positive impact the proposed reforms could have if successful implemented. Reducing poverty through GDP growth. According to the World Bank, a 1% rise in GDP per capita and cut poverty by about 0.7%. If Venezuela economy grows up by 5% per year overall, 3 million people could escape poverty by 2030. That is a massive shift for country currently in deep economic crisis. Reducing informal employment. Currently, 44% of workers are in the informal sector, meaning they lack job security and benefits. Economic diversification, especially into the sector like Finch, agriculture, and tourism, can move people into stable formal employment. Higher GDPA is equal to more tax revenue. A stronger GDPA helps the government collect more taxes without rising rates, giving Venezuela more money to spend on public service like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Boosting global competitiveness, a diversified economy improves Venezuela's global image, attracts investors, and boosts economic realization in the long term. Structure it by groups. In 2026, start with the quick wins like legalized dollar use, offering tax breaks to attract investment and improve transparency at PDVSA. The state oil company, these will help build trust in the system. Now, in 2027 to 2028, scale up reforms like supporting digital payments, investing the agriculture, reform the judiciary, and increasing social welfare spending. This phase strengthens both the economic and public institutions. Now we discuss about 2029 to 30. This is this is the evaluation phase. We aim to see at least 5% annual GDPA growth and a 15% drop in poverty. If these goals are met, it proves the reforms are working. In conclusion, Venezuela economic collapse systems from over-dependence and oil hybridification and weak governance. But there is a path forward by using the slow growth model, which emphasizes invests in capital, labor, and technology, and period with target reforms. Venezuela has a real chance to stabilize its economy and reduce. Thank you so much.